physical activity questionnaire, and I was glad to see that there are no limitations. You're free from pain. There's nothing really that stands out. All of your marks are no. Typically, if we have someone that says yes, we'd like to have them head over to a physician in order to get approval to do certain activities that we might be having you do. I also see that you did right. You have a constant repetitive motion of overhead swings. I think that might play a big role in the different muscular deficits that you might have, as well as I saw you had sprained ankles in your past, and I know we talked about how it wasn't only one, it was actually both, and that can probably really mess up your stability that you have in your ankles and affect other areas in the body as well. Overall, you are a pretty healthy person. You're pretty active. There's nothing really that stands out that tells me I need to be worried about which assessments you can do and which ones you can't. So I have put together this video, which is you completing your different assessments. I'm gonna tell you basically what are the different deficits in there and how we can make them better pretty much. So here we go. So during your postural assessment, I noticed that your left shoulder is slightly higher than your right. It's probably because you have overactive traps and lengthened rhomboids and deep cervical flexors. So what we can do to work on those overactive traps, we can do the upper trap stretch. You hold that for 30 seconds, 3 times. And then in the lengthened muscles, in order to strengthen them, we can do seated cable rows and chin tucks, 3 sets of 10 for those as well. I also couldn't help but notice you do have an arch in your lower back. For that, I think what we can work on are pelvic tilts, 2 sets of 15, and we can stretch your hamstrings, your rectus spinae, and your quadratus lumborum. During your overhead squat assessment, I noticed that your knees tend to move upward. You don't really have any excessive lean, and you have that slight arch in the lower back that we mentioned earlier, and I think that just kind of ripples down and affects other movements that you do as well. For that, what we can do here is we can work on foam rolling or stretching your glutes, and then for those underactive muscles like your hamstrings, we can definitely work on tightening them up. So we can do like some hamstring curls, 3 sets of 10. During your single leg squat, I noticed that your knee typically moves in, and that was not only on your left, but it was also on your right. This is probably because you have overactive adductor complex and vastus lateralis, or your bicep femoris, and then underactive hamstrings or gastrocnemius. So for that, kind of like previously mentioned, we can definitely work on strengthening the hamstrings, and we definitely have to work on stretching out those adductors. In your push-up assessment, I was really glad to see that you really didn't have any problems completing the assessment. I think the only thing I would probably say is make sure that your arms are way more to the side than they are during the assessment, how they were sticking out more. Other than that, everything seemed pretty well. In your abduction test, you also did very well. You were able to complete without any compensations, and I don't see anything that needs to be corrected. For your rotation test, you were able to complete the assessment without any compensations, which is very well. The only thing I would say is when you internally rotated, I think it was just placement. Your arms seemed to go down a bit, but other than that, everything was well. During your shoulder flexion test, that was able to be completed as well without any compensation. For the tuck jump test, Josh, you were able to complete that as well with really no compensations. Everything
looks fairly well. Moving into the Davies test, that is something that we definitely need to work on. Um, your body just sways left and right really bad when you're moving your hands from left to right. I think there we can work on upper body strength as long with upper body agility and definitely work on that core as well. One of the agility tests that I did see is you can do ladder walks but with your hands, and then for core we can work on some planks, and then upper body working on those shoulders as well. During your overhead shoulder press, I didn't really see any need of compensation. I just can definitely notice a lower arch in the back. Um, Again, that goes back to the beginning, how you've always had that, and we just need to work on stretching and strengthening the muscles around that. For the standing row, you were able to complete the assessment with no compensations. I think you're pretty good on that. During your star balance test, I noticed that your ankle is very unstable, which probably has to do with the fact that you sprained not only one but both of them, so it affects both. I also noticed both knees moving inward. I think that is done due to a compensation in order to balance on that one foot, which also makes your hip hike as well. So I think what we need to work on is stretching the adductor complex and your bicep femoris, and then we need to strengthen up your glutes and your vastus medialis. Your LESS test was actually a really good test. Um, there was nothing crazy or specific that I saw that needed to be worked on. If anything, I think you had one of the best tests I've seen, even compared to some of my colleagues. So I think that was overall pretty good.
So I wanted to show you a few things that can probably help you out with your exercises. Here I have a deep tissue foam roller. This would definitely help you with those overactive muscles. You want to definitely hit them first, inhibit them. You don't have to use a deep tissue one. They do have the plain ones, which are, they do the same thing. It's good. This one just goes a little bit deeper, depending on how bad you need it. You can find this honestly anywhere. This was from Five and Below, so $5. Also, small weights. This is a 5 pound. Because we're more on the Corrective, we don't really need heavy weights. Bands can help you out as well if you don't have any of the dumbbells. Bands is all you need. The more resistance, it's going to feel kind of like using dumbbells, as well as ankle weights. Not only do you have to use them on your ankles, but you can strap these around your wrist and they can weigh them down, and then you'll get the effect as well. These are just some of the things that you can use. Like I said, there's many more out there, but I just thought this would be helpful.